Hey, Yerushalmi Daf Lamed. So we're by the two dots, the first set of two dots. I'm going to finish up the parak now. Lo yigadlo mesakel lev elam kein kosher b'shalshelis. It's what we said at the Mishnah, unless it's tied down with a chain. Amrus with a bechanina, kol megalakel v'rabetach sheloi, however raises those German shepherds. Although Kasvoima Lamas Mireu Chesed, the Yerushaka Yazev. Lamas, sort of Marfola says, is a Greek for a dog, and basically you're holding back from Mireu Chesed. People are scared to come, so collectors, and you won't come, and you won't be performing the mitzvah tzedakah properly. Ein portion nosh and nish from the yoin, and we don't set out the pachim for the yoin and the traps. Elam kain hoya rachuk min hayishuv shloishim ris. We need 30 ris. For you can understand. Hacha itma shloishim ris. Here it says 30 ris. I'm not saying you're saying chamishim amma, only chamishim amma, but smaller share. Yes, we liros miriya chamishim amma. In other words, if the issue is that we're scared that they'll eat food someone else in someone else's field, so then it's 50 amas because on a full stomach they won't travel. It's 50 within 50 amas they can travel. On an empty stomach, so they won't come to eat past 50 amas. But lefruche pirachas afilo arba mil and arbas mil would travel even 4 mil, which is 30 ris. So they're ready if there's a chashash of other birds getting trapped. That are not hefka, so then you have to stay away 30 ris. Well, choshesh for food, the shear is much less. Hadloch perk meruba, hadloch perk meruba, hadloch perk meruba, bli neder. Fangt und hadloch perk achoyvel bechaveiroi. Someone who causes a wound, his friend, chayv alo mishum chamisha dvarim. You chayv 5 things: nezek, tzar, ripo, sheves, uboishes, ubeboishes. Benezek tzad. How does nezek work? Simas einoi, if he blinded him, or cut his other chapter of 10, Shabbos Raga broke his foot. Roy noisekilu eved nimka. We look at him as if he's an eved that's being sold. Kama yafa, how much was he worth with his hand? Kama yafa, how much was he worth now without the hand? Tsar, well, what about tsar? Kvoy b'shput, if he burnt him with a spit or the masper with a nail, afil al tziporno, even on his nail, malkum she'enes chabur, it doesn't make a wound necessarily. Oimdim kama odom kayotze b'zeh roitze lito lias mitzdarkach. How much would a person want to accept? How much money would a person want to accept in order to tolerate this kind of pain? Sagt die Gemara, Chayvel lechaveiroi, tanu l'tachol lechaveiroi chamisha, noisen lechamisha, abo, noisen leabo, shloish, noisen leshloish, shneim, noisen leshneim, ech, noisen lechad. So we're saying there's 5, right? There's obviously 5 categories of, we said, nezek, tzar, ripa, sheves, and paisha. So depending on how many you get, that's how much you have to pay. Be'echiz, the Gemara, here we're going to give some examples. He called yodoi, you hit him his hand, v'kata, and he caught it. Noisen lechamisha, he gives him 5. Nezek, tzar, ripa, sheves, and paisha. He called yodoi, but instead of chopping it off, it's savas. It blew up, right? Now it's huge. Nice and abba, he only gives them 4. Tza, ripo, sheves, and boshek. Nezek doesn't give him because it's going to heal on its own. Iko al roisha, he hit him with savas. Nice and shloisha, he gives him 3. Tza, ripo, and boshes. He doesn't have to give him sheves because he doesn't have to, right? The person gets hit in his head, he may not necessarily have to stop working. Right, we assume with the hands people work, so therefore the hand is the right person's hard to use a hand, right? Especially in those days, they did most work with the hands if it's chopped off or it's blown up. But let's say in a place that's not visible, nice and shnem, sar, reaper, those are 2 things that's still negates, pain and healing. But Tumash Shaviyad, if he hits the guy with a bundle of shtaros, nicely echad. He only gives him 1, which is baishas, right? Doesn't hurt that much. He hit him with a couple of papers, but it's embarrassing. Rabbi Yirmiyah Boyi, what about kati yod v'chaza v'kati yod mimalo and maushit noitzar shosho rishoyna? What happens for Rabbi Yirmiyah if he cut his hand and then he cuts his hand the second time a little higher, a little closer to the body? So first he cut it low down, then he cuts it higher up. Can you give him the tsar of the first one? And Rafulda says that it must be talking about a case where they weren't oimid him, they didn't have a chance to be oimid him for the first wound, for the first chopping off of the hand, where he hit it, got him lower down, and now we chopped it again, right? So can we force the mazik to pay for the first one as well, even though the bezin wasn't oimid it? Over Malcolm Achu, these two psukim are fundamentally saying the same thing. So the Gemara says it's one pasuk echad shaygig, ve'echad mezid, one's talking about mezid. And so, if the Gemara, Yom Shoyva, Yom Mezid, right? Let it say only shaygig. And Zicha Mezid, you would have to pay. It's like, no, that can't be. That's not going to work. Why? She don't have a Shoyva, Yom Mezid. He's going to say shaygig is shalei mamain. I would say like this, if it only said shoygig, I would say shoygig shalom mamin. Okay, if you did it b'shoygig, pay cash. Mazid, however, if you did it b'mazid, yikta yodel, will chop off the guy's hand. Have to shu yoymer, mazid, if we have to have mazid. Or you know, mazid would say mazid lo never shoygig, and then say shoygig. Siyama would say mazid shalom mamin. Mazid pays mamin, but shoygig maybe lo shalom klum. Maybe you shouldn't have to pay anything. Avatarach loymer shoygig tarach loymer mazid. Now, the Gemara says we must be talking about over here. We don't literally poke out his eye or chop off his hand. Why? Because she'im hayisum of a sime saying no, your kita v'kita es yadai hechzem eskan v'sisin like hashazam lasas achiv. Because if right, if we talk about we mamish it, where the punishment is that we chop off the guy's hand. What if the guy was already didn't have a hand? You know, maybe hit him with his teeth. What do you do then? Right? So therefore, it has to be that we're talking about money that you pay cash. And I think obviously is not neged directly for hitting somebody. I think it's a borrowed term. In other words, how you mekayim what that guy wanted to do, right? It's impossible. So therefore, yeah, we're talking about we're not going to be mekayim what the guy wanted to do. Instead, we mean to say that you're going to pay money. Fine. Tsar, what about tsar? Kvoi b'shpud. Oy b'masmer. I feel like put him up in shenos chabura. So the Gemara ksiv kvi tachas kvi b'goyim. Hechi, what are we talking about? Im shepatzai v'hitzi damai. If let's say he caused wound and blood came out, that's already covered. Ksiv petza tachas patza. Ma tamalem chabura. What's chabura then? Eloshim kvoi b'shpud. Let's say a kafiyot on the back of his hand with savas, and all it did was it became inflamed, right? So it blew up. Kaf ragloi v'tzavas, or shehidal of shelig, or he put on him snow, or him, or cold water, b'malkam she'enu where it's not visible, chayiv l'irapoisai. He's chayiv to be merapim even though no blood came out. That's what chabura covers. Fine. Now we also said the Mishnah, Oindim kama adam kia. Kama adam kia was a right. So little yes min stabikach. Amar Rav Zira, what does this mean? Chomim ba'anish. You see a guy, Mamalei say to him, hey, kamat boilam eitim alo yavach ahein sarah. How much you want? How much would you be willing to give? And whatever pain you're in now, you shouldn't get. Whatever he says, that's what we would give him. So for similar kind of pain, how much you'd want to get rid of how much you'd want to pay to get rid of the pain, that's what we would have to give to the victim here. What are you talking about? Kama, read the Mishnah. Kama adam reitza litol hi masnita v'temer achein. It says Kama adam reitza litol. Saki, tell me it's how much he should give. So instead, now you see a guy, and say to him, Kamad boy mesev, hain Sarah. How much would you be willing to accept? Right? And that's the lethal part of it. How much would you be willing to accept to be caused this kind of pain? I don't want to be whatever he says, that's what we give him. And obviously that's a lot more than what Fuller points out, right? The guy who, right, just the imagination. He says, I'm going to cause you X amount of pain, right? And how much would how much can I give you to accept X amount of pain? It's going to be a lot more money than a guy who's already in pain. How much would he give, right? So here, in this case, the nizik would get a lot more money. Fine. We give minus food. What does that mean? So the Gemara B'Kadmeis have an achel telufchim v'yorek. I could say, listen, originally I was able to eat lentils and vegetables, a cheap meal. Less and now that I have this wound, I can only eat for the more expensive foods, bacon, eggs, and tarnagolim, because maybe I need to get my health back, so I have to eat things with maybe more protein in it. And whatever extra he has to spend, that's what we give him. I'll prove it to you that this is taka true, that people have to eat extra if they're sick. Because these Roman soldiers, kad mivash, if they got sick, they wouldn't go back to fighting the war. Until they made up to eat what they missed eating the days they were sick. So you see from over here, a person needs to eat more to recover. Repoy, what is repoy? You call Chayv L'Rapaisi. You hit him, you have to help pay his medical bills. All about smach, if now he has sores, imach masmak, if he's smach machas mak, chayv, shlem machas mak, is potter. Chay suvenistra, Chayv L'Rapaisi. If let's say the wound heals and it goes back again, it heals again and goes back and reopens again, Chayv L'Rapaisi each time. Chay so called tzorcha, but let's say completely healed. And a Chayv L'Rapaisi at that point, he's done already. The mazik is not responsible anymore. Zoktig ma ripoi, what is a chayvi kol rapoise? Rav Yimi Abayi, all about smochen svivois hamaka, venistra hamaka, venistra machmas hamaka, mahu. What happens if smochem sores were around the wound, but not on the wound itself, and now because of these sores, the wording is a little off. Well, venistra machmas hamaka. In other words, the maka now became worse because of the sores. Ma, what's the din? And we're going to answer this question in a minute on the top of the next Amid, the next daf. So Mimadik says to Gemara Rapper Rappe Shim Over Al Dava Roifa Pot. What does Rapper Rappe mean? Rapper Rappe means you have to listen. The victim, you assume that the nizik is listening to whatever the doctor tells him to do. What happens if he doesn't listen to the doctor, doesn't take the medication, or does something that exacerbates the maka? Then that's it. Then the bazik is potter. Tanuchar lit another case. Rapper Shim Olskur Gusni Chava Poisa. If now there's bus or mace, there's dead skin in the area, maybe gangrene. So, which Gusni sounds like gangrene. You have to heal him. Tanur Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yudin. Now we're going to answer the question. Tanur Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yudin. All about smachim. If now there's sores, svivas hamaka, like we said before, around the maka. Afpisha nistera hamaka. Even though the maka reopened, chayv l'rapaisai. So he has to give him he has to pay for his doctor's bills, but his sheves is off time that it doesn't have to do because it wasn't directly the makkah, it was these sores around the makkah. Rav Shimon I'm a chidush hakasuv b'parasha zos. No, sheyitin lo sheves. Veripo. That no, it's if you're responsible for the repo, you're also responsible for the sheves. Rak shifta yitoim v'rapis. You see over here, Shimon says no. That if you're mechuyev to pay for the repo, you're mechuyev to pay for the sheves as well. Called